Alright guys, welcome to week 4. I can't believe we are in week 4 already. This semester is flying by super quickly already. But we are going to jump right in. Today we are talking about the details of your LNRAs as well as the details of your program design project. That's kind of that big giant culminating project that you're going to have at the end of this semester. Today is pretty information heavy. This is a PowerPoint that you're going to want to refer back to throughout the entire semester. It just is going to go over a lot of information about the different projects that you have in this class. There's not a lot of new information as far as lecture, but there is a ton of new information as far as assignments and assignment expectations. So definitely keep this PowerPoint bookmarked and refer back to it as you need to. Alright, so our agenda, we're going to go over our objectives for today. We're going to talk about your program design. We're going to review learning needs and resources assessments briefly. We talked about those last week. We're going to go over the details of your LNRAs, how you're going to make your actual LNRA to hand out at your agency. Then we're going to go over your homework in a lot of detail, critique 3, then discussion 3, and then looking ahead to your service learning hours. Alright, so our objectives, the things that we're going to accomplish today, by the end of today's presentation, you guys will have a greater understanding of your final FLE program design project. You're going to understand how your discussion posts relate to your final program design project, and you're also going to be able to effectively design your own LNRA. That is your discussion post for week 4, is designing your own LNRA. Alright, so jumping right into your program design binder. Your program design is that big, large Word document or binder, as I sometimes refer to it, that contains all of your required parts for this project. I've mentioned before that your discussion posts are going to be culminating in this big, large program design binder, and we're going to kind of talk about how that breaks down this week. Your big, large Word document should have a cover page, so the first page of the document should include the name of your program or your presentation. So what's the title of your presentation? You don't know that yet. You'll know that in a few weeks, but that's the title of that presentation you're giving at your agency at the end of the semester, as well as your name. And then you need to make sure that each section of your binder is in the appropriate order. The order that we're going to go through this today is the exact same order that it's listed on your rubric. I would recommend getting that rubric out and looking at it as we go through this presentation. It's located in the Assignments tab under your FLE Program Design. It's also located in the Materials section for week 4. And then you also want to make sure that there are no spelling or grammatical errors throughout your presentation. I will be looking at that I'll be looking at your entire binder in its entirety. I'm not really going to look at each document and give it a spelling and grammar check because we've already done that each week. I'm expecting you in your discussion post to go back and fix any spelling or grammar issues. And then by the time you get to your program design binder, when you're putting all those discussion posts together, if you've already edited that, there shouldn't be any spelling or grammar issues. So the more, again, like I said last week, the more work you put into this in the beginning, the easier it's going to be to compile all of this at the end. Alright, so the first piece of your program design is going to be after your cover page, is going to be your literature review. That's not a new paper, that's a paper that you will already have completed by the time you're turning this project in. You're just going to copy and paste your final copy of your lit review into your binder or into that big Word document. And it's important that it's the final copy. You don't want to give me your rough draft. Make sure it's your lit review 2. You're going to turn in a lit review 1 and a lit review 2, and you're going to give me in your binder a copy of your lit review 2. Same thing goes for audience description. You're going to give me a copy of your final draft and that's going to be your audience description 2. Again, that's a paper that you will have already completed by the time you get to this point in the semester. One thing to note is that as you're going through your binder, or as you're creating your binder, each section needs to be clearly separated. So I need to know that this is your lit review that I'm looking at, and that now this is your audience description. So some of you may want to give an entire page dedicated to that. So you'll have a whole page that just says lit review, and then your lit review will come after that. And then a whole new page will say audience description, and then your audience description will come after that. Some of you might just want to put really bold headings at the top of your pages. So it might say lit review at the top of the page, and then your lit review will start on that same page. However you want to do that is fine, as long as it's clear throughout your entire Word document which part of your project you're giving me next. If I can't tell which part of your project you're on, it's going to be really hard for me to give you points for that part of your binder. Alright, then your third section is going to be your needs assessment. We are going over that today, and that is your discussion question 3 for this week. Within your binder, you're just going to be turning in your blank needs assessment. So that's just a fresh, clean, blank copy of your needs assessment. There is going to be a time during the semester, in a couple weeks actually, when you'll be submitting your completed needs assessment. And so that's going to be all those copies of your assessment that you hand out at your agency. People are going to write their answers in, and then you're going to scan those and upload them to the appropriate assignment submission spot within Blackboard. But all of those completed surveys do not need to be in your binder, just a copy of your blank needs assessment. And then your why section. We talked about your why a little bit last week, and this is going to come in on discussion question 7. That's going to be a very detailed explanation regarding the relevance of your program for your audience. And it should be clearly connected with your service learning, your ASL, academic service learning hours, and your needs assessment. We're going to talk about this later on in the semester. You don't need to worry about the details now, but know that that is the 4th section of your binder, and you'll be completing that through your discussion post 7. The next section of your binder is your concepts. These are going to be the actual topics of your presentation. I'll use the word concepts and topics interchangeably throughout the semester, so keep that in mind. But this is the section where you're going to actually list the topics of your presentation, and that's going to happen in discussion question 5. Then discussion question 6 is where you're going to have your generalizations. That is your broad overarching statements that kind of reflect your takeaway points. Your generalizations represent what you want your audience to remember about your presentation if they don't remember anything else. So you're going to have 3 statements that say, this is what are the main points of my presentation. And that'll be the next section of your binder, as well as your discussion question 6. Alrighty, then you've got your objectives. Your objectives are going to be, like I've said before, very similar to the objectives that we have in this class. There's a pretty standard format that you guys are going to have to follow for that. But you are going to have a section in your binder that's labeled objectives, and you're also going to be creating those in your discussion question 9. Then you've got your learning experiences or your learning tasks. Those are those activities that are going to help you accomplish your objectives. They're going to represent what you want your audience to be able to do with the information that you've taught them. And they need to be realistic activities for the amount of time that you have. Don't plan a 30-minute activity when your whole presentation is supposed to be 30 minutes. But make sure that the activities fit within your 30 to 30-minute presentation. And you're going to make sure that you have a clear list of directions and materials and steps for each of those learning tasks as you're creating them. And that's going to take place in discussion question 10, and then it'll plug in right here in your final program design binder. And the next part is going to be your introduction. That's going to happen in discussion question 11. Not going to get into the details of that right now, but you will have to have all 5 of the required parts. Next, you're going to have your summary, which is going to happen in discussion question 12. and you're going to have to include all of the 4 required parts. We'll discuss that later in the semester. Number 13, discussion post 13 is going to be your marketing tool. And that is going to be basically your advertisement for your program. You're going to create a flyer that you're going to pass out at your agency just to advertise your program. It'll just tell the people at your agency the date and the time and the location and the content or the topics of your presentation. And then the next section is your thank you card. This is the only part of your binder that is not a discussion question. So everything we've covered so far that's a part of your program design is also a discussion question. And so at the end of the semester, you're just going to be compiling these discussion questions and editing them into one big document. Your thank you card will not already be done for you. This is something you're going to have to create to put into your final binder. And the reason being is there's not a whole lot of work involved in this. There's no need for you to submit it as a discussion question and in your binder, because there's not going to be any edits that need to be made. But what you're going to do is write a thank you card for your agency at the end of the semester, just saying, thank you for letting me complete my project with you guys. It needs to be professionally written. It does need to be an actual card. Don't make a handmade card. Don't type a letter in a Word document. Actually select a card from the store. I don't care if it's a 10-cent card or a $2 card. Whatever you want to pick is fine. But it does need to be professional in appearance and appropriate in what it says. No inappropriate jokes or slang should be on the card. If it just says thank you on the front and then you write a little note on the inside, that's perfectly fine. But there should be some portion of that card that is personalized by you with a thank you note, where you're expressing your appreciation in a professional manner, and obviously you're going to want to sign your name on that. So you're going to select that card and you're going to actually mail it or give it to your agency. But before you do that, you're going to scan a picture of it for me so that I can just see that you've done it, and it goes in your binder right here after your marketing tool. And when you do this, you'll just scan a copy of the outside as well as the inside of the card. Don't just show me the outside of the card, otherwise I have no way of knowing if you actually wrote something in the card and gave it to your agency. But you're going to scan a picture of the outside and the inside. You can save those to your computer as picture files or PDF files, and then you'll just upload them directly into your binder within your Word document. Okay, so your last sections are going to be your materials list. This is going to happen in discussion 15. Basically, this is just a list of all of the materials that someone would need in order to put together your presentation. Within this section, you'll also have a copy of your PowerPoint, and you'll want to make sure that you just copy and paste the content of your slides in there. You're already going to have sent me an actual PowerPoint document that includes your PowerPoint for your presentation. For your Word document, you can just take the notes of your PowerPoint, download just the notes, and then copy and paste those into your presentation, or into your binder, and you'll want to also list, like I said, any audio or visual tools that you need, any handouts that you use, anything like that needs to go in your materials section. Then lastly, we've got discussion question 14 is going to be your APA reference list. This is going to include all your references for the whole semester, including everything that you used for your literature review, your audience description, and your presentation. Basically, every resource that you used all semester needs to be included in this comprehensive list, and that's going to be the last part of your binder. It's also going to be your discussion question 14. Okay, then like I said before, the mechanics, you'll be graded on spelling, grammar, punctuation, and then organization. Each new section needs to be clearly marked and labeled for me. So like I said, I need to be able to see which section you're on when a new section starts. And then the sections need to be in order according to the rubric, also according to this PowerPoint. It's the same order. Basically, the takeaway message from this program design is that you're working all semester to put together this presentation for your agency, and this big document at the end is going to serve as the design of your program. And so any family life educator should be able to pick up this Word document that you're compiling, read through it, and implement your exact program. And that's what family life educators do a lot of times. You do need to know how to create your own programs, which is why we're doing this. However, a lot of times they'll share resources with each other. There's no need for everyone to create their own presentation on the same topic out in the real world, when a lot of times people need resources and help with the same topics. And so family life educators will put together binders or programs like this, and they'll share them with each other. So the goal is that your program will be one of those shareable programs that someone could just pick up and replicate if they needed to give a presentation on your topic with the audience that they're working with. Okay? So that's your program design as a whole. And to put this in a little bit of context from last week we looked at the 7 design steps, which are covered in your book, and then we plugged those 7 design steps into how that fits into your project, into your program design. And then this week we actually looked at all of the steps of your program design and plugged those into your discussion questions, so you can see kind of the full breakdown from your textbook, all the different 7 design steps from your textbook, how that relates to the parts of your project, and then actually looking at how the parts of your project, your program design, fit into your discussion questions each week. And hopefully that allows you to see that really the more work you put in each week as we go through, the easier it's going to be for you to compile this final program design. There's a lot of steps to this. There's a lot of different pieces of this binder. So if you wait till the end of the semester to put this together, it's not going to be pretty, and you're really going to have a very miserable week trying to put all this together at once. So again, I know I've said this a million times, but I can't say it enough. Please, please, please invest in these discussion questions. If you have questions as you're going through about them, something you don't understand, please let me know. It's better to get all of your questions answered and have a solid discussion question turned in than to wait until the end and have a lot of questions about each section. Alright, so we're going to switch gears to look at your LNRAs, your Learning Needs and Resources Assessments, and just a quick overview before we get into the specific details of your LNRAs. If you think back to last week, we talked about how a Learning Needs and Resources Assessment is accomplished. And there's 3 key parts to it. We talked about how you will ask, you'll study, and you'll observe. So you're going to ask with your survey. That's what you're going to be creating, your paper copy of your LNRA. Then you're going to be looking at studying. You're going to study your audience and your topic by researching your agency. You've already started that a little tiny bit, but you're going to research them a lot more when it comes to your audience description paper. And then you're also going to research them quite a bit for your lit review, and all of those are going to give you, all of your research for those papers are going to give you good information that you'll need about your audience to put together a good presentation at the end of the semester for them. Then you're going to observe them in their own setting. That's going to happen during your academic service learning hours. You're going to be observing your audience. You're going to be seeing what their typical day is like at work, how they interact with their coworkers, how the boss interacts with the people that they supervise, things like that. And all 3 of those components, asking, studying, and observing, are essential for knowing who your audience is. And we talked before about how the who step, knowing who your audience is, which is accomplished in your audience description paper, how that's the most important step. You can't create an effective program if you don't know who your audience is and you don't really understand them. So all of these 3 steps of your needs assessment, asking, studying, and observing, are really, really important to being able to move on with putting together your program. So an overview of your paper copy of your LNRA, that's what we're going to focus on today. The main thing that you want to learn from your LNRA is who needs what. After you pass out your surveys and you collect them, you want to be able to read through people's answers and find out who at your agency needs to know what information from you. because you're going to use your answers, or you're going to use your audience's answers on this survey to put together your presentation topic. You're going to kind of look at all of the answers collectively together and say, what themes do I see? What do I think that my audience needs the most from me? And then you're going to pick your presentation topic based on that. So you're going to kind of use this question to guide that process of picking your topic. What information will help you know more about the individuals who are coming to your presentation? What do you need to know about your audience in order to be able to put together a good, solid presentation that actually relates to their lives? And you want to think about that as you're putting together your surveys. So your surveys need to be approximately 3 questions, no less than 3, no more than 4. And your questions need to be all open-ended. And open-ended means any response would be appropriate. If anyone can answer yes or no to your questions, those are not open-ended questions, and they're not going to be allowed on your surveys. So make sure that you have open-ended questions, because if you have yes or no questions, people are just going to write yes or no, and you're not going to get any good information from that. So questions that seem really great, like, do you enjoy your job, or are there things that are difficult or challenging at your job? Those sound like great questions, but all someone's going to tell you is, yes, I enjoy my job, or yes, there are challenges at my job. They're not going to tell you what the details of those challenges are. So we want to open those questions up and say, what do you enjoy about your job, or what challenges do you face at your job? Making sure that a simple yes or no would not be an appropriate answer for your questions is going to be really important. Also, you want to have as many surveys completed as possible by as many different types of people as possible. So after you've got your survey made and you're passing it out at your agency, which you're going to pass out on the first day of your service learning, the first day you go to your agency and start your hours, you're going to pass out your presentation, you're going to pass out your surveys, not your presentation, that's not done yet. But you want to pass it out to as many people as possible. So if you're at a child development center, you want to pass it out to the teachers, the assistant teachers, the directors, the secretary, whoever you can get to fill out this survey is who you want to fill it out. Every single person from every single level, not just the supervisor. So that main person of contact that you had to give me for last week's discussion post, you need to get their permission before you hand out this survey to the people that work there. But you don't want to just give it to that supervisor. You want to give it to the supervisor, yes, but also as many other people that work there as possible. So you want to think about what you need to know to make a good presentation for them. And some of the things that you'll need to know are, what situations or challenges are they facing? And some of the ways that you might ask that are, what challenges do you face while doing this work? Or what educational information do you currently need? Or what educational information would benefit you in your job? And you want to make sure that you're gathering as much information as possible. So ask diverse questions. Don't ask 3 or 4 questions that all get at the same point. Ask a lot of different questions that will give you different answers and different information to go off of. And it's really important, you're passing this survey out on your first day of your service learning, and so you need to make sure that it's professional looking, that there's no spelling or grammar errors, that it makes sense, because this is going to give people a sense for who you are, your personality, your style. Don't feel limited from putting your personality in this survey. As long as it's appropriate, you're definitely welcome to add pieces of who you are to your LNRA, and that's going to help your audience start to trust you, to build that safety that we've talked about. You've got to have safety and trust with your audience before they're going to listen to your presentation and care what you have to say. And so you really want to make sure that first day you're putting a good foot forward, and that your survey is really professional, and then it gives people a good solid sense of who you are. So this is going to be your checklist for your LNRAs. Your survey needs to have all of these things. You need to be able to say yes to these questions. So did you include an introduction? Your introduction needs to be at the top of the page, just a short 2 or 3 sentences where you say, hello, my name is Miss Flowers. You would say, I'm a student at the University of Southern Mississippi. I'm enrolled in a senior level course where I have the opportunity to put together an educational presentation for blank, and you'll put the name of your agency. You want to make it personalized for your agency. You don't want them to feel like this is a survey that's standard or that is being passed out by everybody else in the class, because you're putting a lot of work into this and you're making it personalized for them, again, to build that safety, to build that relationship with them. And so include the name of the agency in the survey as many times as you can. You also need to include directions. You need to give them a deadline by which their responses are due. So you're passing out these surveys to them, but in your directions you need to say, please have these completed by such and such date. And when you're picking that date, you need to keep in mind when you have to have your LNRAs turned in and your service learning hours completed. So your first set of service learning hours have to be completed by the 3rd of October. And so in order to have your LNRAs completed at that time, you need to have them, you need to have a deadline date given to them before October 3rd so that you can turn them in to me that day. All right. Then you need to also describe how and to whom their responses should be given. So are you going to leave a folder at your agency that's marked surveys with your name on it, and they can put their surveys in there when they're done? Or are you going to have them turn their surveys into a certain person? Or are you going to come back on a certain date and collect the surveys from them individually? Decide how you want to collect the surveys from them and make sure you include that in your directions. And you want to make sure your directions are as clear as possible. If they're confused just after reading your directions, they're probably not going to put very much time and effort into your survey. Okay? Then, did you include 3 or 4 questions? Your questions need to be clear and inviting. You need to make sure that your questions don't have any words that have a double meaning or could cause misunderstanding. And really importantly, you want to avoid using any terminology that would not be understood by everyone reading your questions. So in this class, we use a lot of specialized terms. We're talking about an LNRA. That's what this survey is. But you don't want to title it LNRA because your audience, the people at your agency, they don't know what an LNRA is. So you might just title it Needs Assessment or Resources Assessment. But you don't want to use the acronym LNRA because they're not going to know what that is. You also don't want to use the acronym FLE, Family Life Education. As a general rule, don't use any specialized language that you've learned at school that your audience might not know. And then again, are your questions open-ended? Making sure every single question of your 3 or 4 questions is open-ended and that a simple yes or no answer would not work for any of them. Then lastly, did you include a thank you? There just needs to be a short line at the end thanking your audience for taking the time to complete your survey. And you also want to assure them that their answers are completely anonymous, that you're not going to go turn in their answers to their boss, that you don't want their names on their surveys. You want to make sure that everything they're saying is going to be kept confidential. And so just put a little note about that on there and thank them for their time. I would definitely recommend having a friend or family member or a roommate read through your survey and see if they understand it. Sometimes we're kind of caught up in our minds and we know our agency, we know the context, and we know what's going on in this class. And so we think that our surveys are really straightforward, but when an outsider reads it, kind of like the people at your agency, they don't necessarily know exactly what's going on. And so if you're unsure of your wording, even if you're sure of your wording, I would still recommend having someone else read through your surveys and see if they understand exactly what you're asking for before you pass it out at your agency. Alright, so looking at your homework for week 4, you have critique 3, discussion question 3, which is your LNRA, and your service learning hours. So for critique 3, that is due by Friday at 5 p.m. As usual, and Critique 3 covers chapters 5 and 6 of your Vela textbook. Alright, discussion question 3. So like I said before, discussion question 3 is your LNRA survey. And so the details of how that's going to work is you're going to create a Word document. You're not just going to type this into the discussion post. If you do, it will not be graded. I need to see the actual Word document that you're planning on passing out at your agency. And so you're going to create this survey in a Word document that looks professional, and you're going to upload that to the discussion post. So there's a place on discussion posts where you can upload a document, and it looks like a little paper clip. You just click on that and upload your file, and that's all you've got to do. You don't have to type anything underneath it. You don't have to say anything about it. Just make sure that your survey is uploaded. And again, a reminder, your survey should contain the 4 sections that we just went through. The introduction, where you're introducing yourself and explaining a little bit about why you're passing out a survey. You're going to give them clear directions, making sure that you tell them when they have to have their surveys completed and who they're going to give their surveys to when they're done. You're going to have your questions, no less than 3, no more than 4 questions. And remember, they need to be open-ended and easy to understand. And they're going to wrap up with a thank you for your audience for completing the survey and assuring them that their responses are confidential. Again, you are responsible for commenting or responding to your assigned peer partners' discussion posts. And how you're going to do that is you're going to view their uploaded document, make some notes on it on your own, and then when you're typing into that response box, you're going to need to follow that discussion feedback format that we talked about last week in the week 3 discussion post. There's 4 required parts for when you're giving feedback to your partners on these specific parts of the binder. And so when you're typing your feedback back to your partner, you need to make sure that A, you've downloaded the document and looked at it and reviewed it, and B, that you have those 4 specific required parts of feedback for your partner. If you're unsure of what those are, go back to the week 3 PowerPoint and review that and make sure that you have all of those parts when you're responding to your partners. I will also be giving you feedback. This is the first post where I'm actually giving you feedback about the work you're turning in. And so you're going to want to incorporate the feedback from both of your peer partners as well as me into your document. And as a general rule, when you get that feedback from me and your partners, it's a good practice to go ahead and put that feedback, implement it into your document, and then go ahead and start building your program design. Start a large document and just paste your discussion posts in there every week and make sure they're edited according to what I say and your peer feedback partners. But this week especially, you have to make those edits right away. If I give you feedback on things that need to change, you have to make those changes before you're allowed to pass that LNRA out at your agency. And so you're going to want to log on, view the feedback that I've given you, and make the required necessary changes as soon as possible, and then send that to me. You're just going to email it to me in a Word document once you've made the changes. I'll review it and I'll say, yep, you're good to go, or nope, you missed these changes that I told you to make. Once you get that final okay from me, then you're good to go ahead and start your service learning hours and pass your surveys out at your agency. Remember, you have to have 3 service learning hours completed by October 3rd. That means that you've got to submit your discussion 3, you've got to get feedback from me, you've got to implement the changes in the feedback, email it to me, and get that final approval from me before you're allowed to begin your service learning hours. There's not a whole lot of time between now when you're submitting your discussion 3 and October 3rd, so I would recommend that you get started on that as soon as possible. Don't wait till the last minute to get this started, because you also don't want to put your audience in a bad position. You don't want to show up on October 2nd with these surveys, spend 3 hours there, and expect them to fill out their surveys while you're there. They might be busy. They might not have time to fill out your survey while you're sitting there the day before it's due. You want to make sure that you drop it off with them, you give them a couple of days to fill it out, and you come back and pick it up. So make sure you start this process as soon as possible. All right, and lastly, looking ahead to your service learning, like I said, your first 3 hours have to be completed by the 3rd. How you're going to document that to me is form number 1. Form number 1 is located in the assignments tab in Blackboard. It's also going to be located in next week's folder when that form is actually due. And you're going to have that form completely filled out, and there's a part where your agency has to actually sign that. Your point of contact at your agency needs to sign the form as well, and it's going to tell me when your first hours were completed. And that's actually a typo right there where it says your first 1 hours. That should say your first 3 hours. And so you're going to have that due. It's outlined in your syllabus of when exactly that's due and how to do that. But keep that on your radar. Again, like I said, you cannot begin your service learning hours until your LNRA has been approved by me, and you've made those final changes and emailed it to me and gotten my final approval. Also, you need to pass out your LNRA during your first service learning visit and pick it up during your last service learning visit to allow your audience plenty of time to complete your surveys. Please, please, please don't rush your audience. They're being very gracious and kind by having you there, allowing you to partner with them and to give your presentation to them. And so we want to always be developing a good relationship with them every single time that we're interacting with them. All right, so that wraps it up for this week. If you have any questions about your LNRAs, please let me know sooner rather than later. If you want to see a copy of what an LNRA should look like, you can arrange a meeting with me. We'll sit down, we'll look at one together. Please don't be suffering alone and confused on this part of the assignment. If you have any questions, let me know. Please keep in mind my office hours if you're wanting to set up a meeting to look at an LNRA and see what yours should look like. I don't have office hours on Friday, so don't email me on Friday trying to set up a meeting. If you want to set up a meeting, please do that early on in the week so we have plenty of time to find a time that works best for both of us.